He looks older, but contrary to reports, not sick. Bakr al-Baghdadi wants to show the world not only that he's alive, but still fighting what he calls the Crusaders. It's not clear whether he's in Syria, Iraq, or elsewhere. Last week, the Islamic State propaganda agency released a video showing those they said carried out the bombings in Sri Lanka pledging allegiance to IS. Baghdadi mentioned them. The attacks in Sri Lanka, he said, were revenge for the defeat of IS in Baghouz, the last redoubt of the Caliphate in Syria in March. Tattered fighters and their families stumbled out, beaten by Kurdish and local Arab fighters and US airstrikes. It was a humiliating defeat. The last time Baghdadi appeared in video was July 2014, when he stood in the Al-Nouri Mosque in Mosul and announced the founding of the Caliphate. That cruel dream has been crushed. But Sri Lanka and other attacks reveal what he later threatened, that the battle would not be confined to any geographical area. He will look for countries with weak intelligence agencies and continue to target innocent people for as long as he remains at large.
And our international editor, Lindsey Hillson, who's filming in America, joins us now. Lindsey, do we believe it definitely is him? I thought the Russians said they'd killed him.
The Russians have said they've killed him. The Americans said that they thought that they had killed him at one point too. It's him, but how relevant is he? Obviously, the point he wants to make is that he's relevant and important, and that it's now. So he gave some indications that it's definitely now. He talked about the demise of the presidents of Sudan and Algeria. So that shows this must have been in the last few days or week that this video was made. Where is he? It was always said in Syria that he had escaped over the border to Iraq. Well, that's possible. One thing's for sure, he's somewhere where there's plenty to eat. He's really quite fat. That means that he abandoned the fighters in Baghouz. And some people in Baghouz, some of those Islamic State fighters who came out so thin, so desperate, so wounded, they were pretty annoyed because they felt that the elite of Islamic State had gone. He must have gone long ago to be looking as healthy as he is now. Is he actually organising things? Towards the end of the video, he's handed some folders which talk about the different provinces. Turkey province, that's interesting. There wasn't a province of Islamic State in Turkey before, so maybe the Turkish intelligence will be looking at that. West Africa was another one. Well, the jihadi violence in Mali and Burkina Faso has got very bad in the last few months. There was a killing in a church in Burkina Faso on Sunday. These tend not to be done by bombs, but drive-by shootings, men on motorbikes. That's what happened. 5 people, including the pastor, killed. So by that, what he's trying to show is that he's in charge of all this. But is he? We don't know. We don't know whether the people who pledge allegiance, like the ones in Sri Lanka, are actually just taking their cue and they're just going and doing these appalling evil acts on their own, and whether he's just somewhere in the Middle East, somewhere in Syria and Iraq, claiming to be in charge of everything, but not really being in charge or not giving orders anymore.
That's Lindsey Hillson in the United States. Now, the Conservative MP Alastair Burt, a former minister from the Foreign Office from 2010 to 2013, and again from 2017 to 2019, joins us from the House of Commons. And in the central London, Karen von Hippel, Director General at the Defence and Security think tank, the Royal United Services Institute. Prior to this, Karen was the Chief of Staff to the Special Presidential Envoy of the Global Coalition to counter ISIS in 2015. Alastair Burt, are you reasonably convinced it is him? And if so, is it bravado or is it desperation?
I think I would have to leave it to others to verify whether or not it's him. But as so often, Lindsey has it absolutely right. What's the point of this video and how relevant is he? If we needed any persuasion, which I hope the world didn't, that because of the collapse of the Daesh state, the problem hadn't gone away. Well, the video will help us to realise that that is absolutely the case. I think part of the aim will be to create a story and to create a reaction. And I think we must be careful not to respond over much to this. Whether or not he is back controlling events, we know that so-called ISIS, Daesh is still there. We know what they're capable of. That's why the counter-Daesh coalition remains in place and we're so prominent in it. And indeed, I think some of those who stayed until the last in Baghouz will have questions to ask of al-Baghdadi if he left earlier. But I think the important thing is we always said that if the territory collapsed, the danger from Daesh was still there. If this video does nothing else, it confirms that is very much the case, but we must not play their game of making this a big story, making him a big story. The danger and the threat to the world is still there, whoever controls it, and the world needs to be on its guard in a marked way, particularly following the tragedies we've seen recently.
Karen von Hippel, the problem really is that whether that is him or it isn't, and we think it very much is, the problem is that what he says still affects people, and Sri Lanka was the latest example of that.
Right. I mean, I suspect that what he's trying to do is demonstrate to the world that ISIL is still a force to be reckoned with. One of the reasons that so many people joined and traveled from over 100 countries, approximately 40,000 fighters and family members came to Syria and Iraq from all over the world. And part of the reason was because they had this territory they controlled. Now they've lost the territory. He's entering a new phase of trying to demonstrate that ISIL can adapt, that it can become more of a virtual caliphate with lots of small affiliates. They may have up to a couple dozen, some stronger than others. And so he's trying to demonstrate that they're still a force to be reckoned with. And probably he's also competing a bit with al-Qaeda, because al-Qaeda is still out there. Hamza bin Laden, the son of Osama bin Laden, is now potentially going to be leading that organization. That's still unclear. The two organizations have been, at loggerheads for several years now, since 2013. And so I think he's trying to say, we're still here. We are going to evolve. We will go more in the cloud, be more of a virtual caliphate, but we still can cause a lot of havoc, and we will.
Well, obviously that is all something we have to be very wary of. But at the same time, he hasn't appeared for 5 years. If he has now appeared, it does look like desperation. He's lost everything else. All he's got left is his own image and a very loud and dangerous voice.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, they still have maybe 10, 15,000 fighters, even in Iraq and Syria. They certainly are appealing to people all over the world. They were very, very savvy online, and they were able to recruit people. And I suspect that they are gearing up to do different types of recruitments, as I said, using different pockets in weak states and in places where the capital can't control territory, like parts of Libya, parts of Somalia, et cetera, in many parts of the world, to try to really become a global network. I think that that's what they will do, but it's still too early to say if it'll be successful or not.
So was President Trump wrong to declare ISIS defeated?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people agree that that was an incorrect assessment. Even his own intelligence leaders were not agreeing with that assessment at all. I think most people know that this is an idea, and you don't defeat an idea by just killing the soldiers on the ground. The idea will live on. And don't forget, ISIL is, it's a third or fourth iteration in the last 15, 20 years of, al-Qaeda in Iraq, of al-Qaeda before that. So these groups evolve. The next one is always a bit more lethal and dangerous than the last, because they learn from the mistakes of their predecessors. So I think we will be dealing with this threat for generations to come. How big of a threat it will be is to be determined.
And very briefly, Alastair Burt, it's not a moment for Britain to lower its guard.
No, not at all. I'm pleased that we do host the communications cell for the counter-Daesh coalition of 74 different nations, but it is absolutely essential. There is no guard that can be lowered, and I do agree with your other correspondent. This is a threat for a long time to come. It won't be dealt with solely by governments. It has to be dealt with by communities and individuals who reject a murderous ideology, whoever is running it, because there will always be someone to take on the cause, but there must always be a determination to resist it.
Alastair Burt, thank you very much for joining us. And Karen von Hippel, thank you very much.
Thank you.